Hey traders, have you ever had such a bad week trading that you wanted to quit? Have you ever had it where it seems like no matter what you do, everything just goes wrong? Well, in this video, I'm going to show you how to take all those losses and turn them into the ammunition that keeps you going long term. Hi, I'm Pepper, and this is the brand new, rebooted Godly Trading Podcast Bible Study for Traders. We're going to be here every single Sunday night at this very time, and we're going to talk about not only how we are doing as traders, how we're doing in our trading, but how we can use the world's best trading manual, the Bible, to help us going for the coming week. So buckle up for tonight. We're going to give you the information and the strength it's going to take to get through this upcoming week. We got a lot going on this week, so stick with me. So tonight's biblical principle, honestly, this James chapter 1 verse 2 to 4, I think this is the hardest passage in the Bible to live out, and I don't know how James managed to do this. By the way, not to chase a rabbit, James, the brother of Jesus, right? Can you imagine what that must have been like growing up? He's 10 years old, he's running the house, and Mary's like, why can't you be more like your brother Jesus? He's literally perfect. And James is all like, Argh. So James is the head of the Jerusalem church. And he is, oh, we've got somebody chatting in. Hello, Casey from Indiana. Thank you for being here. By the way, if any of you were with me last night in our workshop, the replay of that is going out tonight. So James could have said, I love the way he starts in James 1:1. He could have said, James, the brother of Jesus. And how? Who's going to argue with that? He doesn't say that. He doesn't say he was the head of the church at Jerusalem. So he could have said that. He didn't. He said, James, a bondservant of God. Give says, good evening. Thank you for being here as well. James does this. And I put it in the book, somewhere in the book, it's in there. But this is, for me as a Christian, for me as a trader, I see what it is. I see what it says. And I say, yes, absolutely. But how in the world do you put this into practice? Give Good says, good evening, and we'll see how the Pacers do tonight. My producer over here, my oldest child, had put in parentheses basketball, so that I would know who the Pacers were. I thought they were hockey. But anyway, sorry about that. So let me read you, before we go any further, before I get sidetracked yet again, James 1, verse 2 to 4. My brethren. Now, just stopping right there. All right, he's not talking to men specifically. He's just saying, my peeps. P.O. says, hello. Count it all joy when you fall into various trials, knowing that the testing of your faith, I should do this, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience, but let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. Now, if you've been with me at all during any of our Bible study for traders, or if you have read the book, you will know that from time to time, I tend to geek out when it comes to the Hebrew and the Greek. I love diving down into it. And let me just say this. I heard once someone say that all translations are interpretations, right? There's a world of difference between English and Greek. The expression there, it's all Greek to me. And I believe, for those, let me put down in the comments, anybody who's in the live chat right now, I would like to know if you are bilingual, right? So what does that mean? Well, someone who speaks 3 languages is called trilingual. Someone who speaks 2 languages is bilingual. And someone who speaks 1 language is an American. Unless you're from the South, and then you can speak those 2 languages, Southern and English. I do think that we Americans who don't know any other language are a bit hampered because we think in English, right? The Bible was written in Greek. So I'm going to go through this litany of just amazing things that James says here and show you what it means in what he's trying to say, what he's really trying to say. And this is so applicable to us as traders. So first things first, he said, my brethren, Count it all joy. That word count there means to consider, to deem it. Count it all joy. And if you don't know, this would be a great time to plug the book. The book, it's based off of the fruit of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And it's interesting, and I know I've gotten off track. I'll get back on track in a second. It's interesting that I have not actually had any pushback from non-Christians about the fact that this is, that I'm teaching from a biblical standpoint. I had some pushback from Christians about that, but anyway. But I tell people, hey, look, because I go on podcasts as a guest and say, even if you're a follower of the Klingon religion, and I have yet to find the name of it, what is there about love, joy, peace, patience, kindness that runs afoul of your religion? There may be peace, but apart from that. But the word joy is what we're after. We start at self-control and work backwards towards joy. So James says, count it all joy, consider it, deem it joy, when you fall into various trials. I'm going to stop right there. The most impactful word in that sentence, the one when I read the translations, I'm like, really? Really? Is the word when. You're like, huh? What? Yeah, English to Greek. When means whenever, right? Count it all joy whenever you fall into various trials. As long as. So, as long as you're falling into trials, count it joy. As soon as. That is another translation of this word. Count it joy as soon as you fall into various trials as a trader. As soon as you have a loss, you're supposed to count that joy as soon as that. By the way, fall into, the idea here is encompassed. One of the times that this is used, Nate says this is interesting. I know several Nates. If you are the Nate that is a friend of the producer back here, thank you for being here. The parable of the Good Samaritan talks about this fellow who I don't actually know he has a name. Well, nobody has a name in the story, but we know the name of this. By the way, nowhere in the story does it call him good. He's just the Samaritan. We somehow just call him good. Rabbit trail, not doing it. It says that he fell among thieves. That's the term here. When you fall among temptations. Has anybody ever felt, put down in the chat, just put me a yes in the chat. Has anybody ever felt like you are surrounded by problems? Thank you for asking that, Casey. What translation am I using? I love, by the way, this is not a plug for anything because they're a nonprofit. There's a fantastic, what's an app? It's also a website. I don't know how you call it. Company, organization called blueletterbible.org. Blueletterbible.org. They have both an app and a website. And you can go through any translation. This one we're reading out right now is New King James. I prefer the New King James because, so the King James is sort of universally accepted. By the way, not going to chase this rabbit for very long. Since we're in the chapter of James, James's name is not James. His name's not James. Not at all. His name's Jacob. But, for whatever reason, King James's minions, when he had his minions go out and translate this thing, they decided to, because their boss's name was James, they changed the brother of Jesus' name from Jacob to James. Anyway, I'm using the New King James. Basically, it's the King James that gets rid of the these and the thous. I also like the English Standard. I love the New Living Translation. That is not a standard translation. That one, instead of word for word, that one is thought for thought. So they look through the Greek and say, okay, what were they trying to say? Let's say that in English, right? It's not word for word, it's thought for thought. But I will go back and forth with New King James and English Standard, but by and large, I stick with New King James because that's the default setting on the app. So count it all joy immediately when you fall amongst, are surrounded by various trials. Now, this would be a great time to show you why I'm talking about this. So, Mr. Producer, would you please pop up the graph? Now, let me know in the chat. Someone just say yes. Someone give me a thumbs up. If you can see me standing next to what, until recently, was a fairly nice looking return graph. Someone say yes in the chat. Say no or whatnot. If you can tell what I'm showing here, I would need a little feedback on that to make sure Mr. Producer's done his job correctly. Nate, tell your boy if he's screwing up right now, please. I'd appreciate it. So this is the return chart of my particular trading account with Darwinex. They're a prop firm, fantastic. They're a prop firm. If you want to know more about prop firms, we can talk about that another time. I've got a couple of videos out there on it. Essentially, I'm trading someone else's money as if I'm think of it like a hedge fund that outsources its employees. The best way to put it. So this is my return. I've been trading with them since last April. Been doing fairly well. And I am at that point now that I just trade on cruise control. One of the biggest hurdles that any trader has to overcome, I say one of them, the biggest hurdle. This discipline, patience, all the things we go over in the book. Your barrel of monkeys, the thing that holds you back. I have managed to get to the other side of that, which is why I do all of this, right? However, it doesn't mean I don't still feel it. I say all of that to say this. Every day I open up I'm a swing trader of Forex. You know what Forex is? Foreign currency exchange. And I trade the daily chart. So I trade about 15 minutes a day. I have found that the more I neglect my account, the better it does. The more of me I put into it. That's a whole other topic with Alcoholics Anonymous people call it when they're not reformed. They're what? They're what's the word I'm looking for? Recovery. I'm a recovering day trader, not going back. Anyway, so I trade the daily chart 15 minutes a day. I open up my platform, I go clickety-clickety for 15 minutes, I shut it down and move on with life. I don't deviate, I no longer allow my emotions to control me. I trade on cruise control. And I say that to say that I'm not patting myself on the back, I'm not flexing or anything like that. Did I use the term correctly? Mr. Gen X, Gen Y, Gen Z, Gen Millennial?
Gen Z.
Gen Z, Mr. Gen Z. I'm not flexing on it. I'm just saying this is my mentality. I'm so busy with life that this is the time I have. And I say that to say this. Nothing has changed. You see this graph behind me, next to me, wherever it is on. It's just going up, and this is trading. Nothing's ever a straight line. You got a squiggly line on your way up until the bend at the end. I'm a trend trader, and the cliche out there, because it's true, is the trend is your friend until the bend at the end. Well, this bend at the end is not forever. The point I'm trying to get across here, that I seem to be failing to get to, is that I didn't change. I didn't break my rules. The market didn't change. I'm just going through a period of drawdown. 8 losses in a row since last Monday. Last Monday, I was up right at 1% for the month. Normally, when I get 2%, I shut it down and I'm done. It normally happens somewhere around the 10th to the 12th of the month.
Casey asked, do you do Forex or future too?
I only do Forex, and here's why. It's a fantastic question. The critical element in any trading is consistency. Within that, you want to be consistent in everything that you do. Matter of fact, we're going to get to, I say we're going to get to it, down here at the end of verse 4, there's something about consistency, something we get to it. So, what does that have to do with futures versus Forex? Risk management. Maintaining consistent risk management is paramount, critical. And so for me, I risk 1% per trade. This graph that you see, this is a 0.5% per trade because Darwinex doubles it because I screwed up at the beginning and forgot. Don't worry about all of that. I risk 1% per trade every single time without fail. With Forex, that is no problem. You just adjust your position size. With stock, depending on the price of the stock, you can do that. Matter of fact, if you're trading Robinhood, or you can do fractional shares, you can do that. With futures, you have to go contract by contract. Unless you've got a cajillion dollars, it is very hard to adjust your position size so that you're always risking 1%. So that is why, for anybody in our program, anybody that I'm coaching, anybody that just is asking me a question, where should I start? Futures is not a good place to start if you are struggling with consistency, in my opinion. For that very reason, that you can't trade half a contract. You can't trade a quarter contract. I can trade a quarter share of Tesla on Robinhood app. I can trade a micro lot of Forex so that I make sure I'm 1%. With futures, it's your risk percentage can be a little over the map, and that does hurt your consistency. It does hurt this. You never know if this big win, this big return was because of your strategy or because that day you had to risk more because you had to go contract by contract. So this is my opinion. This is why we're all here. For my opinion. Actually, we're here for the Word of God, which I've gotten so far off track. In our program, if you want to call it that, our guidance program, I liken what we do to the way Captain Barbossa in Pirates of the Caribbean said that the pirate's code was more of a guideline. I can't tell adults what to do, but I strongly encourage everyone to start simple. And for me, simple is 4x trading with 1% risk per day on the daily chart. That's just the easiest way to start. I would do the whole trading as a skill and juggle in front of you, but I have my son in here. And I don't want to embarrass myself. I'd rather embarrass myself in front of you than him because he's the one that calls me old every day. So.
And I will judge you.
And he will judge me. Consistency is what we are all after. And what we're talking about tonight is the key that unlocks consistency. It is just so difficult to wrap your brain around this idea that when you fall into various trials, when you fall amongst, when you go through 8 losses in a row, that's why I forgot why this is up here. So last Monday trading time for me, I trade every single day at 3:30 p.m. Central. That is a half hour before the Forex market closes for 5 minutes and the world shifts over the next day. So last Monday, May the 12th at 3:30 p.m. Central, I was at like 0.91% for the month. And I lost, and that was, well, I'm not on top of it, am I? Over there, you see the very tippy top of this curve right at the edge of the map. That was May the 12th. And I lost 8 trades in a row. I felt surrounded by troubles. I felt encompassed by losses. And did I count it all joy? I would love to say that I did. I would love to stand up here and say that I prayed, thank you God that I had to do this. Now, I have a great example of this. And this is what has helped me, by the way. Being transparent in front of all of you helps. Having a group, we meet on Monday nights. It's kind of like trading group therapy. But my father, producer man's grandfather, passed away from cancer, liver cancer. And 6 months before he passed away, he went around to various churches giving his testimony. And he would stand up, thank you for having me, look out at the crowd, and say, I thank God every day he gave me cancer. And talk about counting it all joy. That is where I need to make sure I get myself in this situation. This is not life or death. You're right, Casey. Futures does have micro and mini contracts with certain products. You're absolutely right. And if you are here in the U.S., our regulations are not very conducive to traders. So futures is the only one, really, apart from stocks. Futures is the only one that passes muster with a lot of regulators. They want us to be in futures because it's all centralized exchange. They can control it. There might be a bit of a rebel in me while I do that. Give says futures can encompass a lot of different instruments than there are platforms that can make it more simple. That is absolutely true. And futures is probably the one that I have explored the least. I'm one of these that I get into something. Once you get into a groove, you don't mess with it. So I started, and let me just tell you why. Here are the 2 reasons. Here are the 3 reasons I picked Forex. First and foremost, I finally came to the realization that I could not day trade and have a full-time job that involved driving. Now, I'm not going to say that I ever had my laptop open next to me in the truck going 70 miles an hour down the interstate trying to enter day trades. I'm not going to say that. Stop looking at me. I'm not going to say that. I am a recovering day trader. But I picked Forex, A, because it's open at night. So is futures. I picked Forex because it was slower to a certain extent, but so is futures. But here's the thing. I picked Forex because there's 28. I got to the point like I am overwhelmed. And with Forex, there's 28 of them. I can scan them and I'm done. Not going to pick gold and just done one thing. That is the beauty of trading. The skill that we apply. I talked about this last night in our workshop. By the way, I do these workshops every week. It's just the 3 main lines that are holding you back. You guys sound like you know what you're talking about. You're probably past the workshop level. But the skill that you learn of analysis, standing firm on the faith of the plan that you have built, executing that plan. Trading is 3 things. Trading is only 3 things. Trade your plan, get out of your own way, repeat. That's all that trading is. And that applies to stocks and futures and Forex and commodities. It applies to everything. And I love the fact that trading is it's a big tent. Anybody can trade. Now, a lot of my friends are futures traders. My buddy, my partner that I've been met with every afternoon for 4 years. Man, I feel old. He's a futures guy. He's been trying to hush you. He's been trying to convince me to come over to the dark side and trade futures. But anyway, so when I was going through this period of Tuesday loss, this strategy that I've been trading for 3 years is built to not take a full stop loss. Like I mentioned, I risk 1% per trade. I trade the daily chart. I set everything at the ATR, average true range. So my first take profit is 1. My stop loss is 1.5. It's been that way for 3 years. The strategy is built that I don't hit that full stop loss that often. There's ways to get out early. There's only 4 types of trades in the world. You've got a big win, a small loss, and a big loss. Your system is designed to get rid of the big losses. The small loss and the small win cancel each other out, and what you're left with is the big win and profit. And so I designed the system to hardly ever hit this big loss. And I hadn't had a full stop loss since February. I had 4 in a week. And that is the time when you start to think, what is wrong? The voices in your head start saying, why am I going through this? Did I do something wrong? You look at it, no. I was listening to, if anybody hasn't ever seen Myron Golden on YouTube, I highly recommend it. Binge watch it. It's fantastic. He's fantastic. He told the story of the video I was watching last week. John 9, the blind guy, the Pharisees bring the blind guy to, boy, that's hard to say. The Pharisees walk the blind guy over to Jesus and say, hey man, who sinned that he was born blind? Him or his parents? Now, okay, he was born blind. So for it to be his fault, he would have had to have sinned before he was born. Not sure if they thought that through. But his point was, this guy's going through this so that I can do this thing right now. And I think, why am I going through this? I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm doing everything according to plan. That's when you go back and you look at your back testing results. And if you don't have a trade plan that has been thoroughly back tested, that is in our program, in our whatever, coaching, mentoring, patting you on the back and walking this road with you, however you want to describe it. That is step 1. Have a plan that you can stick to with measurable metrics that you can hold yourself accountable to. Go look at it and see if what it said would happen. It's what's happening. There's no more applicable verse in the entire Bible to trading than this. Hebrews 11:1. I love this. And I would love to mention here it is. Fantastic. Hebrews 11:1. And I would love to mention the author. If you know who wrote Hebrews, let me know, because as far as I can tell, no one does. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. That is your back testing and your trade plan in a nutshell. Think about it. The substance of things hoped for, you back test. The evidence of things not seen. You have this data, this plan that you have put together. You have poured your heart and soul into making sure that it works. And then you go forward in life, trading it live, standing on the firm foundation of this information that you have built. It is the evidence of things not seen. Past performance is no guarantee of future performance. I love this verse as it's applicable. And that's what you have to stand on when you go through various trials. Because there's 2 elements here. Yes, I need to count it all joy because it's working on me to do a thing. But also, I have to make sure that I don't go bouncing off the walls in my head. I don't whine and complain that, well, okay. Full disclosure, you can count it all joy and you can stand firm on the faith of what you're doing is correct and still whine and complain. I can multitask, I still whine and complain at the same time. I had that right to whine and complain. Matter of fact, I highly encourage everybody out there, especially if you're a day trader and something goes wrong, instead of taking your anger out on your keyboard, step away, go outside, howl at the moon for 5 minutes, get it out of your system, and then come back in and sit down. While I'm going through this, I have to quiet the voices in my head that 2-3 years ago would have said, it's time to switch strategies. You would have thought I would have lost more weight back then for all the jumping I did from strategy to strategy. I had to stand firm on the evidence, the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen through that period at the end. But at the same time, I can't let that affect me. I am supposed to count it all joy when I fall into these kinds of temptations. Why? Why does James want us to do this? Dadgummit, Mr. Jacob, whose name got changed in the 15th century? Knowing, this word knowing, to learn to know, to come to know, to realize. It's not an instant binary off on. So that you can come to know, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. Testing, by the way, in the Greek here, means proving. And this faith here, this faith that is paramount. I'm going to go ahead and take this opportunity to plug the book. I mentioned we talk about the fruit of the Spirit. The whole book is the journey towards joy, the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness. We talk about faith in that chapter. And you can get a copy of this at tradingwithjoybook.com. But this faith that we have to stand on something. That is what we have built, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. Now, in the fruit of the Spirit, Paul, I think Paul would have loved an Excel spreadsheet. Paul loved him a list. You go through all of his letters, he was listing things off left and right. So he has this list. And King James's minions translate patience into the original King James, long suffering. Long suffering describes two groups of people perfectly. All right? Traders and New Orleans Saints fans. Yes, you're with me here. All right? If you're a New Orleans Saints fan, except for those 8 or 9 glorious years when we had Drew Brees, the best quarterback to ever play in the NFL, except for those 8 or 9 years, we were long suffering. And right now we are long suffering. Traders, the same way. Long suffering. This word patience. Steadfastness. Constancy. Endurance. It is patient. Patience. Endurance. Think about that. I had to endure. Now I say had to. As if I know the future that this 8 trade losses in a row is over with. You have to endure in trading. Not just endure, but patiently endure. Ideally, without the whining and complaining. Now, as long as you whine and complain away from your keyboard and from everybody else, that's between you and God. Knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience, but let patience, endurance, steadfastness, have its perfect work. Perfect there means complete, finished. I love this. Wanting nothing necessary for completeness. But let patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect, complete, lacking nothing. And that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. So what is he saying here is that, and I know that James wasn't writing this to traders. Not because trading wasn't in the Bible, because it absolutely is in the Bible. I've done an entire set of videos on trading in the Bible, Matthew 25. The word, I'm going on a rabbit hole. I apologize. I'm not going to do that. But it's in there. We'll do that at some point. Now, they weren't trading the drachma versus the mana or anything. I just completely distracted myself. I think that James is talking to traders here, except for... Give says, except for Tom and Peyton. That's all the time we have tonight, folks. So anyway, sorry, we're not gonna include them because it's my show, and Drew Brees broke 9 ribs, and dadgummit, he deserves to be mentioned first. Can you imagine? This is it. This is this verse in a nutshell. Can you imagine what it takes to get to the point? And you can dump the chart now if you want to. get to the point where you can go through 8 losses in a row and immediately count it all joy. I think that if that was, by the way, I stand before you as someone who did not. Now, 3 or 4 losses into it, you do kind of get, not immune, what's the word I'm looking for, when you get desensitized to it. You do kind of get, well, desensitized to it. You're like, okay, another day, another trading loss. But that's not the same as acceptance. That's just numb is the word I'm looking for. You just get numb to it. But imagine when you get to that point where you look at your, is the chart still there or not? You don't have to put it back. When you look at this chart and you see the big giant bend at the end, you go, it's just trading. And it is, right? It's just math. Part of the whining and complaining that happened with this was because I had just got called up to the big leagues in my prop firm, and I went from over here to over here. Now I'm trading an investor's money. Whereas before I was in their training program and I was just trading firm money. So it's just timing. It's just math. Trading boils down to math. That's all it is. It's probabilities. Does your system say, your system never says something is going to happen. Your system says there's a higher likelihood than not that this thing will happen. I have a chart, and I need to show to everyone. It'll probably be next week at this point because I have no idea where it is in the big black box over there, nor does Mr. Editor. That shows if you have a certain win rate. Right now my win rate's around 58%. I'd love it to be 60, but 58's fine. If you have a certain, whatever your win percentage is, there's this percent chance you're going to have this many losses in a row, right? So there'll be a 10% chance you'll have 20 losses in a row. You'll have a 50% chance you'll have 3. It's all math. This was going to happen at some point. It just so happened that it occurred at the moment when I had people staring at me going, oh, should we give you our money? Maybe not. I mean, it's just bad timing is all it is. I say bad timing. There's no such thing as bad timing in God's world. God created time. And yeah, he's probably not happy that I whined and complained as much as I did. Let me back up. So imagine that you're me. Bless your heart. Imagine that you're me and you're going through 8 losses in a row. You're at 1% for the month. You could have called it quits. There's a reason I didn't. I'll get into that another time. And you lose what is essentially 2 months worth of work, if we want to call it that. Back to where I was in February. That's 3 months worth of work. Didn't do the math before. And you say to yourself, okay, I count it all joy as I'm going through this trial. I think that if you as a trader got to that point, you would be complete, whole, entire, wanting nothing necessary. I think that is where we are all headed. That's what we want to get to. It's where we want to get to. That these things can happen. And like my father, who stood before people and said, I thank God every day he gave me cancer. I don't know if he said gave me cancer. I thank God every day that I have cancer. I pray, it's a dangerous prayer, that I will get to the point where I can look at this dip at the end of my return and say, I thank God this happened. Give says, no longer fear it. It's not scary to you, nor no emotional response. Free to execute. Loss no longer impacts you. Absolutely. Now, a lot of people, this is an aside here. A lot of people will say, well, what if you just used a trading algorithm? I mean, it's still you in charge of the algorithm. I have done that in the past. I have some algorithms that I have. I'm of the opinion, through my own personal experience, that trading algorithms require as much time as manual trading does. Matter of fact, for me, it would require more time because you really do need to monitor them, right? The best explanation I've ever heard of someone who is successful trading algorithms. Well, I'm talking about algorithms. He said he treats them like he's a business owner and they're his employees. He has to manage them. I once decided, back during my day trading days, remember, I'm a recovering day trader. I was terrible at it because I couldn't get out of my own way. Has anybody out there ever had a great run and given it all back on the last trade? Has anyone, drop me a comment, has anyone out there ever said, I wish I had stopped one trade early, or I wish I had stopped before that last trade. I wish I could just not make that last trade. That was me. And so I said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to program. I learned to program for this purpose. I'm going to program a trading algorithm that will pick up the slack for all of my weaknesses. I'm going to do all the analysis. I'm going to click enter, and then I'm going to turn it all over to the trading robot and let it handle all of the discipline that I don't have and be the strength in my weakness. Well, that all was great until the day came when one of the rules I had programmed in, hey, do not ever allow a day trade to turn into a swing trade. The robot closes every single trade every day at 3:45 because that's the discipline I wanted to have. 3:44 rolls around and I'm in 4 trades and they're all negative. So I click the off switch on the trading algorithm and there went all my robotic discipline. I think that getting to the point where we can mentally trade like a robot, for lack of a better term, is when we will be able to say, I am a complete trader. P.O. says all the time, fix that and succeed. Yes, yes. Consistency is what is the key to being a successful trader. Again, trading is 3 things. Trade your plan, get out of your own way, and repeat. Those 3 things require consistency. And so one of the things that we tell people in our, again, whatever you want to call it, associational guidelines, our particular Pirates Code. Ooh, it'd be a fantastic name for our program, the Pirates Code. It's only just a guideline. Stop shaking your head at me. Does anybody out there have kids like mine who love to be sarcastic and point out how old you are? Give says, a lot of times people are lazy and don't really want to grow. They lean on mechanical, not always grow. Yes, absolutely. At the end of the day, you are still responsible for what's going on. At the end of the day, it's not the algorithm's money, and it's not the robot's discipline. It's whatever you put into it. But when you can get to the point, you don't need a robot, and you don't need these crutches. If you're an algorithmic trader, there are perfectly legitimate reasons to do it, one of which is time. But better than that, the consistency that we all search for in order to get over that hump to being a successful trader is found in this term, perfect, complete, lacking nothing necessary to completeness. If you can be a complete trader that looks at an 8-trade losing streak and goes, my system, my back test said it might happen. There's a song. Mama said there'd be days like this. Is that true? Is that a song? Oh dear. I hope not. Because if it is, I think it's Michael Jackson. I don't like Michael Jackson, especially as a kid. Oh. Anyway. My system said there'd be days like that. And that is one of the things, that's why I tie this. Give says mechanical may not necessarily mean a bot is being used though. That is true. The system that I trade, my trading strategy that I built from scratch, the guy that I learned from called it an algorithm because at the end of the day, an algorithm is just a series of yes/no statements. Did this happen? Then do that. Did that happen? Then do this. Just check marks. And my system is, okay, this happens and this happens. It's literally like 8 check boxes. And when you get to checkbox number 8, and now these days it's more like 5. The older and more experienced I get, the more I'll simplify it. But it's just check, 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 enter. That's all mechanical trading is. It doesn't have to be an algorithm. It can be a mechanical system. And I highly encourage everybody to do that because eventually it becomes second nature and you don't have to do it. But to get there, we have to be willing to overcome. We have to get out of our own way. Step number 2. Now, Hebrews 11:3. I love Hebrews, by the way. And one day, when we all get to heaven, we will know who wrote God wrote Hebrews. Okay, we can just say God wrote it. We will know who wrote it down. Hebrews 11:3 says, by faith we understand that God made the heavens. Proverbs 3:5. This one. Every trader should have this above his screen. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will make your path straight. One of the missions, no, that's not the right word. The critical elements for our business, godly trading. The rules, not a guideline, but a rule here, is a verse whose address just fled from my brain. It's in red letters, so it's Jesus said it. Jesus said, so let your light shine before men that they see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. That is where I want to be the point of. I don't want you to ever look at what I'm saying and say, oh, look, he's saying he's successful. Yes, and that is because for reasons, and we don't have time tonight because we're coming up on the 1 hour mark. You have to define success on the front end. We'll get into that. We got a whole week-long thing about, anyway. I don't ever want anyone to look at me and say, I want to be like him. Paul, the Apostle Paul, not one of you named Paul. Actually, I have two Pauls in our Monday night group. And I keep talking about the Apostle. Saint Paul, for my Catholic brothers and sisters. Paul said this verse that is just terrifying. Paul said, follow me as I follow Christ. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Now, there are a lot of people on social media that say, hey, follow me as I trade. Don't try to figure it out yourself. I'm never going to say that. And I'm never going to point to myself and say, look at my success. I'm going to say, I have been through the valley of the shadow of death. I really hope that I'm currently through it and not in the midst of it, and point people to the one who's walking along with me. I think about a valley, and I love David for having pointed this out, right? Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you're with me. It's God's presence that is what keeps us going. But a valley is what? A valley is a spot, a path between two mountains. So you're standing here, you have a mountain to your left and a mountain to your right, and you're walking through this. Now, David also calls it, by the way, this is very important. David calls it the valley of the shadow of death, not the valley of death. Right? So it wasn't real. It was just a valley full of anxiety and gloom and doom is what I've been walking through. You're faced with three choices. You can just quit. Right? You can stop walking completely. I give up. Right? My account is down 5%. Worst month I've had ever. Previously that was 4.5. My very first month trading this new prop firm was 4.5. Now it's 5. 5% down. Month's not over with. Who knows where it'll end up? Can end up 15% up. It won't. I don't trade that way. Down 5%. I feel like I'm in the midst of this valley. I can just quit and fall down and cry. Option 2. I can turn to the left or to the right. What's a valley? It's a spot between two mountains. I can climb the sheer cliff walls next to me. Can go start over. I can abandon and take the hard way out. Or I can keep walking, knowing that God is with me, walking this with me. I can see the end of the valley, right? I can see the end of the light at the end of the tunnel. That doesn't mean I don't still have to every day wake up and put one foot in front of the other and continue walking through that valley until I get to the end of it. But I don't worry about that. David doesn't worry about that. I sometimes worry about that. Because God is with me. What does 2 mean?
2-minute warning.
2-minute warning. I'm wrapping this up. I'm going to keep this at an hour. So, James 1:2-4. I'm going to read it one last time and just tell you all that this is where I want to be as a trader. This is where I want everyone to be as a trader. And we're here to help get you there. My brethren, my fellow traders, count it all joy when you fall immediately, as soon as you fall into and are surrounded by lots and lots of losses and drawdown, knowing that the testing of your faith in yourself, in your system, in your mission, in your calling, in God, testing of your faith produces patience, endurance, long suffering. But let patience and that endurance and that constancy have its perfect, complete work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing as a trader. That is my prayer for myself. That is my prayer for all of you. If anyone has any questions, drop them in now. If you need to get in contact with me for any reason, you can go to our website, godlytrading.com. We've got a link on there. I hope we have a link on there. We have a link on there where you can. I'm happy to have a one-on-one video call with anybody for any reason, free of charge. You can email me at pepper@godlytrading.com. Get a hold of me. If you need to just talk, that's what we're here for. If you need to vent, if you need to howl at the moon and whine and complain, I have been through everything you could possibly go through, with the possible exception of trading futures. So, with that, guys, thank you all for being here. Thank you for my producer for giving up his Sunday night. I will be back next week. I'm going to try to have a guest on, my personal both trading and spiritual mentor who got me into this in the first place. I'll be back next Sunday evening at 5 o'clock Central. With that, guys, thank you for being here, and I'll see you next time.